Have you ever had one of those moments where an ordinary day suddenly takes an extraordinary turn? Let me share a story that completely changed my outlook on life. It started on a rainy afternoon in a little café, and what happened next left me with lessons I carry to this day. This isn't just my story, it might be yours too. Stick around, because this encounter holds a lesson you don't want to miss. Life is full of routines, days that blend into weeks, and weeks into months. That day felt no different. I woke up, went about my tasks, and decided to spend my afternoon reading at my favorite cafe. Nothing special, nothing exciting, just another day. Or so I thought. The cafe was my escape. A cozy corner with warm lighting, the comforting hum of people chatting, and the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee. I had my book and my favorite drink. It was my safe space. But little did I know, something remarkable was about to happen that would disrupt this ordinary routine in the best way possible. The rain was falling softly, creating this soothing rhythm on the window panes. I remember the cafe being unusually packed that day. Maybe it was the weather, or maybe it was just one of those days where everyone seemed to need a warm cup of something. I found a small table by the corner, a spot where I could observe without being disturbed. And then she walked in, a stranger drenched from the rain, but with an energy that stood out. She had a certain warmth about her, an effortless charm that made the room feel lighter. As her eyes scanned the room for a seat, they landed on my table. She smiled and asked, "Mind if I join you?" I wasn't in the mood for company, but something in her voice made it impossible to say no. Before I could think twice, I found myself nodding. "Sure, go ahead." At first it was polite small talk, comments about the rain, the cozy ambiance of the cafe, and the packed crowd. But then she noticed the book in my hand and asked, "What's the one thing you've learned from that so far?" That question stopped me in my tracks. It wasn't just casual curiosity. It was genuine, like she truly wanted to know. Suddenly, this wasn't just a polite exchange. It was the beginning of something deeper. As we talked, I was struck by how effortlessly the conversation flowed. She shared pieces of her life, stories filled with triumphs and heartbreaks. And without even realizing it, I found myself opening up too. I talked about things I rarely discuss, even with my closest friends. What stood out the most wasn't just what she said, but how she listened. She wasn't distracted, fidgeting with her phone, or waiting for her turn to speak. She was fully present, hanging on to every word as if it mattered deeply. At one point, she leaned in slightly and said something I'll never forget. "You know, the most precious gift we can give someone is our attention. Most people don't realize how powerful that is." And the way she said it, it felt like a truth I had always known, but never fully understood until that moment. Then came the moment that shifted everything. Out of nowhere, she asked me, "If you could change one thing about your life right now, what would it be?" It felt like the entire cafe went silent. That question hit me like a ton of bricks. I sat there, unsure how to respond. It wasn't just a question. It was an invitation to confront parts of myself I'd been avoiding for years. After a long pause, I took a deep breath and said something I hadn't even admitted to myself. "I feel stuck. I'm not unhappy, but I'm not exactly happy either. It's like I'm just going through the motions, waiting for something to change. But I don't know what." She nodded, not with pity, but with understanding. And then she said something I'll carry with me forever. Maybe it's not about waiting for something to change. Maybe it's about you deciding to change. As we talked, she started sharing stories from her own life. Moments of struggle, triumph, and quiet reflection. She wasn't lecturing. She was simply speaking from her heart, and her words carried a weight I couldn't ignore. She said, "You know, most people spend their days chasing things, achievements, approval, possessions, and yet they miss what's right in front of them. Life doesn't happen in the past or the future. It happens here, now. I learned that the hard way. She paused and smiled gently, as if remembering something bittersweet. It's like this coffee, she continued, gesturing to her cup. Most people drink it while checking their phone or rushing out the door. But if you slow down, really savor it, you'll realize how much beauty there is in the little things. Then, she shared a story about a time when she carried resentment for years, thinking it gave her power over someone who had wronged her. But you know what I realized? That grudge wasn't hurting them, it was hurting me. Letting go isn't about giving them a free pass. It's about freeing yourself. Her voice softened as she leaned in slightly. And then, there's action, she said. We wait and wait, thinking the perfect moment will come. But it never does. You have to move, even if it's just one small step. That's what courage looks like. Not being fearless, but acting despite the fear. Her words felt like a gentle nudge, the kind you don't even realize you need until it happens. It wasn't just advice, it was a roadmap, drawn from her own experiences and offered without expectation. As the rain began to ease, she glanced at her watch and said, I should get going. I wanted to ask for her number, her email, anything to stay connected, but something told me this wasn't that kind of encounter. She smiled, stood up, and with a simple, take care of yourself, she was gone. I sat there for a long time, replaying her words in my mind. I realized how much lighter I felt, as if she had unlocked something in me that had been stuck for years. In the weeks that followed, I began to make changes. I practiced being present, forgave myself for past mistakes, and finally took steps toward goals I had been avoiding. That day in the cafe taught me that sometimes the most profound lessons come from the most unexpected people. And sometimes a stranger can see you more clearly than you see yourself. Life is full of these moments, opportunities to connect, to learn, and to grow. But they only happen if we're open to them. That day in the cafe wasn't just a chance encounter. It was a turning point. Have you ever had an encounter with a stranger that changed your perspective on life? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear it. And if this video resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more stories and life lessons. Let's keep learning and growing together.